I'm with Celina Caesar-Chavannes, who's been the Member of Parliament for Whitby for the last 4 years. Celina, I want to talk to you about multiculturalism. We're coming up to the 47th anniversary of the policy. Have we made progress? Have we not? How are things going in Canada?
Oh my goodness.
Tell us what you really think.
Tell me what I'm really thinking. Well, you're asking me this question a week after news broke on the Prime Minister in blackface. And, I was asked this question a couple of times around how do I feel about it? And is there any different? Have we come such a long way? I think in that context, in the context of the Prime Minister, there was a missed opportunity to really lift and really look at the underbelly of what multiculturalism means, what diversity as our strength means, what inclusion means. It was a missed opportunity to have a national conversation, in particular around the Black community and the destructive nature of blackface and why it was part of and became part of what people did to dehumanize Black people. And that wasn't discussed. There was an opportunity for him in the context of the Human Rights Museum and in the context of the prairies where blackface was spread in Canada to say, here's the historical context of this and this is why it was wrong. But then to also say tangibly, and this is what we do with our children, when you make a mistake, what did you learn? And what are you going to do to make it better? Now, people would say to me, well, Celina, this past government, they've done so much for racism and multiculturalism and our community, especially anti-Black racism. Yes, they did. But that's because the community was there advocating and making sure that they pushed their government to do better. So what should have happened was that we should have pushed the Prime Minister to say, what are you going to do tangibly if you are elected? We give you our vote to ensure that you make amends for this, to ensure that you build on that legacy and not just treat them with kid gloves. There's an opportunity to push for our governments to do better and to still support them. And I think that opportunity was lost here a little bit.
What would you like to see happening on that issue as well as diversity?
I would like there to be, more to see more diversity in the public service. That's something that the government can tangibly do within the federal public service to see. And I've introduced Bill 468 to ensure that we have Black people in senior positions. There has never been a deputy minister or assistant deputy minister who look like me. And this is not due to lack of meritorious candidates. And that comes at us so often. Well, you need to hire on merit. Well, we out there and we have the skill set and we have the scholastic expertise. There are barriers in the system and we need to critically look at why we don't see representation.
We're in the midst of an election, so we can be a little bit political. In the last few months, perhaps the last year, you tangled quite a bit with Maxime Bernier of the New People's Party. Tell me a little bit about that.
I don't know why we keep entertaining him as a legitimate candidate or a legitimate leader in Canada. His anti-immigration stance, his policy, the way he doesn't seem to understand that this country has been built and flourishes by the hands of immigrants. And if you can't understand the economic value of immigration, then perhaps this job is not for you. Perhaps this job, you should just remove yourself from it and do something else. But we keep legitimizing his nonsense. And so he feels emboldened to continue to spew it, emboldened to say, I must be in the leaders' debate. You don't. No, you don't. And yes, people have freedom of speech and freedom to say as they wish. But if you cannot acknowledge the importance of immigration to this country's success, perhaps being a leader of it is not what you should be doing.
In terms of, well, you said you were going to be provocative, but to the point. No, I think you have been on the front lines of that debate with him, and it's really important that you continue to speak about that. The policy has evolved over the 47 years to address racism more directly. I think probably the Prime Minister was the first Prime Minister to talk about or to name anti-black racism, which people sort of didn't want to talk about.
Yes.
And I'm sure you are partly to be credited for that, bring that sense of awareness. Where do you think we need to go next with the policy?
I think we need to put teeth.
So you talked about the public service.
Yeah.
What about in society at large?
Yeah, well, we need to put teeth to the policy, right? I mean, if I could speak to the decade of people of African descent,
Right.
there are three very distinct pillars: justice, development, and recognition. And within each of those three, the federal government has a role. Within justice, we should have removed mandatory minimum a long time ago. There are reasons why these mandatory minimums are unconstitutional, and they should be removed. When we talk about expungements for individuals who carry marijuana, over surveillance of communities which have disproportionately negatively impacted Black and Indigenous communities, to have them overrepresented in jail because of that, they should be expunged. When we talk about our immigration policies, people coming from countries that have a high percentage of Black population, their immigration numbers are low. Development, how many Black-owned businesses or businesses owned by people of color does the government work with? We need to have numbers. We need to understand that to be able to change it. And if we're not able to talk about it and put teeth to a policy, what is the purpose of having the policy? Just to say that we did it? We need tangible measures and outcomes to be able to measure the success of whether that policy has worked or not. Don't just tell me you've recognized the decade. So, what are you going to do about it? And that's where we need to push our governments to do better.
Right. Do you think you're going to be doing some of that?
I hope so.
Have you?
I hope so. I hope so. I really think that the conversation has been pushed, and I've pushed it along insofar as to get people energized about it. And not just Black people or people of color or Indigenous people. Canadians need to understand the benefit of what is one of the most powerful economic drivers we have in Canada, and that is multiculturalism. And it's not just about the Black community or communities of color or Indigenous communities to do it. Collectively, there is a benefit to each of us when our communities are strong.
Lastly, I just want to ask you about polarization. Mm-hmm. In a sense, Maxime Bernier represents that or is responding to that. Do you think we're becoming a more polarized society?
I would hope not. I think again, you lend credence to him talking nonsense, and it seems as if this is the way we're going. But I think the vast majority of Canadians, they won't stand for it. At least I hope. That is my hope.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.